a former hedge fund manager. So welcome back to the program.
Thank you for the invite, Glenn. Good to be with you, and greetings to your viewers and listeners.
So we have a situation which appears to get more complex. That is, in this fight in Eurasia, in which the Americans define the Chinese as their main opponents, we're nonetheless, we're fighting Russia through the Ukrainian proxy, a war which we're losing. Iran is also, of course, been attacked directly by Israel. I suspect that the next round there might be indirect attacks, be it Syria or Azerbaijan or something. But this also, at least the last round, appeared to be a loss. And we see the Iranians and Russians getting closer. So it's a confusing picture. I was wondering how you see this this dynamic between the Russians and Iranians. Do you see them getting closer because of this, or to what extent do you think they would actually come to each other's assistance?
I think that there's no question that they will be coming closer to each other's assistance, because they have each been targeted by the let's call it Western Empire, and to make sense of what is going on, it's useful to always go back to what has been explained to us from the high priests of Davos at World Economic Forum, that it is a conflict between the two models of governance. And so this was something that George Soros explained in one of his annual speeches to Davos, to World Economic Forum. And in a way, he is correct. That is correct, but I think it's not two systems of governance. It's more the conflict between the Western neocolonialist imperialistic system against pretty much everybody else. And I think that this Western neocolonialist system of governance is predatory. And their overarching strategic imperative is to preserve and defend their hegemony over the Eurasian landmass. And in order to do this, they have to prevent any rival power from emerging on the Eurasian continent. And so, since the days of Halford Mackinder, they have formulated this as the pivot power, which they said a pivot power might emerge on Eurasian landmass, and then they could become a land-based empire, and that with time they could grow and become so powerful and wealthy that they could displace the maritime empire, which is what British Empire was at the time. And so Mackinder already 100 years ago proposed how to prevent the land-based empire, which they already had assumed that would be Russia, how to prevent it from emerging and becoming more powerful than the British Empire and displacing the British Empire in the world. And the recipe was to surround the pivot area with so many beachheads through which they could continuously impose wars on Russia and continuously weaken Russia and drain it so that it can never become a major power to contend with. And Mackinder specifically named France, Italy, Egypt, and Korea as those beachheads, and India. Sorry, so France, Italy, Egypt, India, and Korea. But in the last 100 years, of course, the geostrategy has changed. So what we have today is pretty much the whole strip going from the Baltic Sea down to the Eastern Mediterranean and then across two Koreas. So they have kind of seeded that whole strip with potential crisis flashpoints. And so we see today that they took advantage of Ukraine to impose a war to Russia. They have already designated the Balkans as the second front in the conflict between the West and Russia. Then, of course, the Middle East. They on 7 October 2023, the war in the Middle East escalated to a dangerous level. Their objective is clearly to take down the Iranian regime, which is again, in the service of them having hegemony over the Western Eurasian continent. We've seen that there was an attempt to get India and Pakistan into another war. We see just in the last week or so that the Azerbaijan has started antagonizing both Russia to the north and Iran to the south, and that Turkish deep state has been used to do the same, because what the imperials, let's call it by its name, what the British are trying to achieve is to defend their hegemony over the Eurasian landmass by taking the Turkish deep state as their proxy. And they have been promising them the creation of the Great Turania, which is basically, the idea of uniting economically and politically all the Turkic people between Turkey and pretty much China, because there you have, you go from Turkey eastwards, you have Azerbaijan, you have all the stans, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all the way to the Chinese Xinjiang province, which is all populated by majority Turkic people. So to appeal to the Turkish deep state to collaborate with the Western Empire, they're promising them the creation of this great Turania, where somebody like Erdogan or maybe Aliyev in Baku could emerge as these great statesmen, uniters of the Turkic people under one leadership, to create a large, powerful political entity. But in the meantime, what they're asking of them is to serve their purposes. So we see now Azerbaijan antagonizing Russia, deliberately taking action to deteriorate the relationships, the relationship between Russia, cooperating with Western intelligence services and Israel to antagonize the Iranians. Then you have the whole region of northwest Iran, which is also populated by majority Turkic people, which is South Azerbaijan. So maybe, for Aliyev, the idea might be, hey, if we could destabilize Iran, and if we could regime change it, then maybe he could expand the scope, the size of Azerbaijan by annexing South Azerbaijan, taking part of the Iran's territory today. And let's not forget also that the Turks have collaborated with British intelligence on taking down the regime of Bashar al-Assad by cultivating HTS from the remnants of the al-Nusra's front and Al-Qaeda in Syria. Now we know fully well that those forces have been cultivated by the British intelligence agencies in cooperation with the Turkish deep state. So all these different crisis flashpoints, all these conflicts that are on the verge of emerging or that have already escalated, they all make part of the one and the same conflict. And then, if we go back to what George Soros told us, that's exactly what it is. It's the clash between two systems of governance. And I think that you could even take this a step further and you could say that it's the clash between Western empire and the BRICS movement, because BRICS movement has emerged as an alternative to the Western empire. So instead of countries being disunited, where, one by one they can be taken down through either terrorism or separatist movements or color revolution, political assassinations, actions like this, they unite and they create an alternative system where they can trade, they can cooperate, they can share defense and security provisions as they have done through Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And they know exactly what they're dealing with, because in recently, I think within the last year or two, Shanghai Cooperation Organization did publish a number of strategic documents in which they identified specifically the threat of terrorism, separatism, and political extremism as the most important threats to confront and defend against. And this is exactly the way Western powers have acted. They have acted through proxies who are either terror organizations, separatist groups, or domestic extremists in target countries, whether we're talking about Myanmar or we're talking about Iran or we're talking about Syria or Ukraine. It's always one and the same thing, and the danger is that other flashpoint might emerge in the Baltic states, in the Balkans. There's also tensions between India and Bangladesh, which recently had a regime change as well, between Bangladesh and Myanmar, North Korea versus South Korea, and of course, China and Taiwan could also become a war front. So while it seems confusing if you go by day-to-day event, if you zoom out and you try to understand the strategy of the Western Empire and what they're trying to achieve, then you realize that all of these crises are different battlegrounds of the same exact war.